How's everyone doing today? Hopefully it's good. I hope you're doing good too, Nathan. My
I
name is
am.
Dylan. I'm an assistant director in the Office of Fine Thank you for joining us on Keeping It Real today. I am joined by, I already said his name, but feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name's Nathan slash Trey, and I'm a scholarship coordinator here at East Texas A&M University.
Yeah, we did have our name change fairly recently. It's about, we're the still same old, here to help y'all and keep it real with financial aid and scholarships. So I just want to thank y'all for coming today. There's quite a bit to talk about today. It's the start of a new semester, so a lot of things are going about. It's still the first week of class, so things are starting to roll out steadily. Syllabus days are probably over at this point, so it's time to buckle down and listen to your professors and do good in classes, because that correlates to one of the first things I want to talk about, which is SAP. So if you're not familiar with SAP, that's okay. We're going to have a quick breakdown of what it is before talking about it. SAP stands for Satisfactory Academic Progress. I generally like talking about this every time we do keep it real because it's such an important aspect of financial aid eligibility. This determines if you're eligible for federal, state financial aid, and sometimes even institutional financial aid, such as scholarships, which Nathan slash Trey goes over. So, very important stuff to keep in mind for about that. Uh, Please disregard that. Always a busy time of year at this point. But yes, very important. There are several different metrics of which satisfactory academic progress are evaluated. One of them is a GPA component. For undergraduate students, this means you have to maintain a 2.0 GPA per semester and institutionally, so that includes previous semester's GPA, including the semester that you're currently taking. So that's a 2.0 requirement for undergraduate level students. For graduate students, it's a little more complicated, but generally, as long as you meet their general 3.0 requirement, you're meeting that requirement for graduate school's GPA. There's certain points where they evaluate it, but definitely meet with the graduate school and make sure that you're meeting that requirement for their GPA component, because if you're not, you may have to do a academic reinstatement plan with them in order to be going back into good standing for the graduate school's GPA. Thankfully, for completion of hours, it's the same between both classifications. For the completion rate, you have to complete at least two-thirds of your courses per semester, and overall, including transfer coursework. So that means any coursework that you may have transferred in, that does get factored into your overall completion rate. So it's very important to know. So it's very important to work with your advisor in those type of scenarios, because like let's say you did exceptional in the fall semester, completed everything, perfect, but you may see a warning for completion or something like that. That may not be for your semester level, which we evaluate, but it may be involved with your overall, including your transfer coursework. So it's important to meet with your academic advisor to see how that's going in order to see what you need to do in order to maintain that completion rate requirement. Another thing to keep an eye out for is all Fs. If you receive all Fs in a semester, that's an automatic financial aid suspension because you're neither meeting the GPA or the completion of hours components. So definitely it's best to avoid that scenario because that definitely puts you on a financial aid suspension. Generally, with the other areas, if you have a semester that puts you on a warning, you can still receive financial aid for that warning semester, but that's your opportunity to kind of correct where things are going, see if you need to do retakes in order to bump up that GPA, stuff like that. If a second semester happens where you're neither meeting the GPA or completion of hours component on either of those metrics, the semester level or the overall for, institutional GPA and overall including transfer for completion of hours, then that places students on a financial aid suspension. I already forewarned on the LFs. That's an automatic suspension as soon as it happens. No warnings or anything like that. As soon as it happens, it's a suspension. So it's definitely important to keep an eye out for that because if you have a financial suspension or your financial aid hasn't dispersed, it may be because of that. So it's definitely important to go through the financial aid appeal process to see if you can get approved for financial aid for the spring semester or another semester moving forward. So it's definitely important to do that. That is available on our website. So if that's something that's impacting you, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen temporarily so that way you can kind of get an idea on where you can find this financial aid appeal. So let me go ahead and do that right quick. This real quick. I have too many tabs open, so I am sorry about that. See here. There we go. share the screen real quick. And definitely let me know if you can see my window. Trey, thank you.
It's loading. I can see it now.
Okay, is it the homepage? Yes.
Correct.
Perfect. So at our East Texas A&M homepage, you would need to go to the little search bar, type in financial aid. You can see I do this a lot as I help students. Uh, any of these can work. It doesn't really matter which, because the financial aid appeal process is available for all levels of students. So undergraduate, graduate, CBE, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and go there. From here, you would need to go to the appeals section right over here. You can just click it or scroll down, whichever is easier for you. And then you'd be able to find the appeal form right here. So it's not too difficult to find, but you would need to go through this process in order to regain eligibility if you are on a financial aid suspension. It's very important that you do that. I could probably spend the entire session on this one section, so I'm going to try to keep it brief just because there's a lot of other things to talk about. But read through this form, complete everything that it's asking of you, input your information, CWD, first name, last name, classification, what your department is, so like college business, humanities, science, engineering, what your major is, and make sure you type in your student email. It's very important that you type it correctly because all future correspondence goes to that email. It is an electronic form, so essentially it takes what you type in and uses that to send out communications from the appeals committee. So if a situation arises where you typo your email, you may be getting important information that you're not seeing because of that typo. So definitely make sure you type it in correctly. You just fill out everything else that's applicable. For you graduate students, if you click the graduate or doctoral level, another question will pop in. This asks if you successfully appealed with your academic suspension with the graduate school, because that's how you get that academic reinstatement letter that I mentioned earlier. This is important because undergraduate students need to meet with their advisor to build an education plan, but graduate students instead need to submit that academic reinstatement letter because that acts as your education plan replacement, because that tells you what you need to do for the semester. Unfortunately, the financial aid office is a separate department, so we don't have access to what graduate school tells you. So you need to provide that information so that way we can process your appeal. Very important that you do so. So if you have appealed, just hit yes, and you have an upload button for there. Button for that. And that's where you upload it. Everything else is processed the same between in regards to the rest of the step one process. You need to provide an explanation on what occurred. This could be something that's specific to you and unique to you. There may be underlying scenarios that may be shared, but your situation is unique to you. So as you provide information, do provide in as much detail as you can, because this goes to a private committee. Not everyone's going to see this. It's only up to that committee. So your information is private and secure. So you provide what situation occurred or what you're doing moving forward. And then here's the most important part, supporting documentation. This essentially is anything that co-aligns with what you typed in here or there. You don't need to provide documentation for both, as long as it's at least one. That's the important part. But please provide something. If you provide nothing, there's no guarantee that your appeal may be approved, because this is something that they do look for the Financial Aid Appeals Committee. So definitely keep that in mind. It could, but I wouldn't leave it to chance. You know, you're relying on this for federal financial aid, for state financial aid. So definitely make sure that you have all your ducks in a line, all your dots and I's dots, your T's crossed, so that your appeal can be submitted as efficiently and thoroughly as possible. There are different scenarios here. You can click one and see different sort of things that may be applicable to you. If you see something that's not applicable to you, that's okay. In the other section, there's a section that says my form is not listed. You can type in whatever your situation is or whatever you're submitting, and then you would just upload it here as an attachment. And then everything is just, standard student acknowledgments. Make sure you read them because it's very important. Depending on the timing on when you submit your appeal, it may be getting close to drop days and stuff like that. Once again, they try to review the appeal process as fast as they can, but you don't want to leave it to chance in regards to it not being reviewed by the drop date. So make sure that you make arrangements with student accounts to see what you need to do in order to stay in your classes in order for the appeal to go through. I very briefly went over through the appeal process with that, so definitely look into it, read it as thoroughly as you can, because we do have other things to talk about as well. and we will have a session for question and answers once we're done. Just please note that these questions have to be general. We're not going to be answering specific personal questions on here because your privacy is privy only to you. So definitely keep that in mind when you ask your questions. If you do have specific questions, you would be able to go through QList and other things like that to set up financial aid appointments and ask us about that. You're also able to set an appointment with scholarships. So definitely a good idea if you have those personal one-on-one questions. But if they're general, feel free to ask them over here. We'll do our best to answer them based off of not revealing too much personal information. So very, very important stuff in regards to that. Let's see here. Let me stop sharing real quick in regards to that. So another thing that I want to talk about, it's not related to SAP, it's not related to financial appeals, but there's something called consortium agreements. This may be something that you may be involved in. If you are, please be made aware that consortium agreements are processed after the census state. I cannot talk at all today. Or maybe I've been talking too much. Oh well. But yeah, either way, the census date is a very important date because that's when your classes are locked in for enrollment purposes, and that allows us in order to make adjustments in certain scenarios. So a consortium agreement is done when a student is taking classes at two different institutions. So one is the home school and one is the host school. Uh, in many cases, our office may act as the home school. So if your primary degree is being pursued here, but you're taking a class like at a community college, like Collin, Navarro, or any other college, could be UNT. I've seen one from Florida one time. But as long as it's from another college and you're taking that class at the same time here, the consortium agreement can help maximize your federal financial aid or your Texas grant in certain scenarios. So if you're taking multiple classes at different places, you can't get financial aid at the other place because you're getting it here. But if you did a consortium agreement, we can move those credit hours you're taking at the other school and apply them to your aid over here for federal financial aid and the Texas grant if you have it. That process occurs after census. So census is January 29th. So not on January 29th, but the day after is when this process begins. So it's important to keep that in mind. So if you have a consortium agreement that take place at that point, this is also true if you're part of the RELIS program with Texas A&M UNC and Blinn College. That process happens all internally and occurs after the census dates. So definitely keep that in mind. This is also true if you are taking a PJC math class. So if you're involved with the parasenior math class, PGCEM 300, it's like a parasenior math class, but you take it here. That process also occurs after census. So if you're enrolled in 12 credit hours, but you see your financial aid's only been applied for 9 credit hours, and you're in that PJC math class, work with student accounts, see what you need to do in order to stay enrolled in that class, because after the census date, that's when that credit hours are applied to your federal financial aid and to your Texas grant and stuff like that. So that way you can get that as much as you're supposed to based off those. Man, I really can't talk today. I'm going to have a drink.
You're doing great. You're doing great, Dylan.
But yes, very important to keep those dates in mind. January 29th of the census, so the day after. So that's one of those things. Uh, Trey, isn't there something else that happens after census in regards to your processes as well?
Yes, thank you so much, Dylan. So I'll make mine fairly quick. So usually say when you're given an institutional scholarship like the Blue and Gold Scholarship or the Presidential Scholarship, those do have semester credit hours requirements that are tied to those. So you have to be in 15 semester credit hours each semester in order for that to disperse towards your account. Now, in some circumstances, say if you're graduating or your degree plan will allow you to be in those 15 semester credit hours for that specific term, then you can fill out what's called the scholarship enrollment exception form. And that is actually located on our webpage really quick, and I'll share that. And can you please let me know when you see my screen?
Uh, yes. See it now.
Okay, perfect. So just like the appeals, we're going to go to the financial aid webpage. And instead of going to the appeals section, we're actually going to go to the form section. So it should take you all the way down, and then you see this scholarship enrollment exception form. You're basically going to go ahead and fill that out, and that will take care of the initial step. And then it will go to your academic advisor for them to process. And then that's when it comes to me. So like Dylan said, this will happen after the census date. Now, with them being a multitude of scholarship enrollment exception forms from students, I can't say that they're all going to be done on Census Day, but that's when I start working on those. So just keep that in mind. Even if you submitted it, just as long as you submitted it, you should be all good to go.
And yeah, as you can see here, oh, the page is already
Oh,
gone.
sorry. I can come back.
But that's where you can find this consortium agreement as well. So in that same section, there is a link that has a consortium agreement. You can see it right there as well. So very important stuff. Yeah, so very important to keep that information in mind. There are other ones as well. So definitely keep an eye out for those forms because there may be like the scholarship exception form, as you mentioned. If it's your graduating semester, there may be something like called the Homer Tate Scholarship. A lot of those type of things occur after the census date, so keep that in mind. Unfortunately, it doesn't occur immediately, but after that date is when things are able to process. So still kind of early on, but definitely, keep an eye on your account, keep an eye on that date just so that way you're prepared for those days and those processes at that point in time. So very important information to take care of.
And can I
So
just plug one thing in? And it has
absolutely.
been open for the donor funded scholarship portal has been open since December 1st. So if you're an admitted student, you can just log into your MyLeo account, go to the apps tab, and you should see a little white square that says donor funded scholarships. All you're going to do is sign in and then just start knocking out those applications. And while the June 1st deadline is, I would say, pretty far away, it's going to come up real quick. So I would just go in and knock them out as soon as you can.
hmm Yeah, definitely do that because, we do have all those scholarship funds that are just sitting there waiting for you to apply for them. But don't wait too long because, the sooner someone applies for them, the sooner in the application. He already mentioned some of important information about that. So definitely follow through with that to get as much financial aid as you possibly can. Because, we're here to help. We have these resources available. So definitely look into those as soon as you can, just so that way you'll all be good. Same thing with the donor funded scholarship portal. The FAFSA for next fall and next spring is also open. So definitely do that as soon as you can as well, because some things are just information you're eligible for based off your financial data, like federal student loans, the Pell Grants. But there are some other forms of financial aid that are first come first served sort of deals. The Texas grant definitely looks at the sooner the students do it. There are others such as like the TPEG grant, SCOG grant. There are some other qualifications such as your SAI, but the sooner you do that, the sooner you're in the application for those types of financial aid because those are more limited funding in nature. So it's definitely important that you submit the FAFSA as soon as you can, just so that way you'll be in first in line for those types of federal and state financial aid. So very important to keep in mind of. It may seem like that's still like a whole year away, but yeah, things start fairly quickly in terms of like scholarships, federal and state financial aid. So definitely keep that in mind. So that's kind of like what we wanted to bring you up to speed for. Keep it real, things to kind of keep an eye out for, things to pay attention to. We will open the floor for questions now, so there's a Q&A box for you to do so. But I will say another nifty idea to do is to go ahead and follow us on social media. I know, shameless social media plugin, but it is important because, if you did not know about the scholarships that we just mentioned about right now, we mentioned that on our social media platforms. We mentioned it on Twitter, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. So let me go ahead and share my screen so you can get those QR codes available to you. Also share my screen in regards to, let's see here. There we go. Let me know if you can see it.
That I can.
Yes. So this is all of our relevant QR codes for Twitter. Well, X, previously known as Twitter. I'm so used to saying Twitter. It's been Twitter for so long. But
Honestly,
officially
I think
X.
everybody says Twitter.
Yeah, X, Instagram, Facebook, all the common social media platforms, definitely give us a follow because, some of the things were mentioned as they happen. So like the opening of the FAFSA, opening of the TASFA, those things were talked about in our social media, opening of the scholarship portal, those things were talked about. Every so often, we'll post important information as well. I know we often hold events, sometimes called like Money Days, where we do like scholarship stuff for completed FAFSAs, completed TASFA, stuff like that. We also hold occasional very important informational events. I know there was one that was held that was like essentially an important movie that went over important financial information. So we do have a lot of things like that. So definitely follow us, so that you're made aware, be involved, and so that way you don't miss important opportunities like that. Also going to switch to where is it? There we go. Money Management Center. So yeah, this is another series of QR codes, very important as well. This is for the Money Management Center. There are offices that are adjacently related to both financial aid and scholarships, but they're a little different though. So like scholarships process scholarships and financial aid process, federal, state, work study, all that sort of stuff. The Management Center is very helpful in regards to how you can use those funds to your best benefit. How do you budget? How do you plan? That sort of stuff. Skills that you're kind of expected to know after you go to college, but may not know how to do that. You may have not, have those opportunities, but this is where that comes in. So they are very helpful. There's many coaches that work with you, build relations with you. Uh, they help you with this sort of areas just so that way you can plan, manage your money, budget, learn, and be prepared for after college as well as what happens in college as well. So very important that you follow them as well. Uh, definitely give them a follow. They definitely appreciate it. But yeah, definitely do all that. And hopefully that gave you all enough time to think of some questions to ask us, because now we're going to go ahead and start answering some questions in the Q&A box.
Whoop, whoop. Okay, now let's see. It looks like that first question is, does accepting the financial aid loan affect VA benefits, Veteran Affair benefits, and Hazelwood?
That is a very good question, because technically speaking, VA benefits, such as like Hazelwood or like Chapter 11 stuff, they're not necessarily financial aid, but they are technically a form of financial assistance for you. So essentially, financial aid can't impact them, but they may be able to impact your financial aid. So without going into like specific mechanics on personal accounts, the way this works is that every student has something called a estimated cost of attendance or a cost of attendance budget. So this forms as a baseline. The Department of Education requires schools to build this based off using regional, historic, national data, stuff like that. So it's composed of different components like housing, food, transportation, miscellaneous personal expenses, your tuition and fees, stuff like that. So essentially that serves as a basis of how much financial aid you can receive in an aid year. So essentially what happens is that those benefits are entitled to you. So, financial aid's not going to touch those. But if you receive those benefits, that may result in you potentially losing some forms of financial aid, ideally loans. So not the best forms of financial aid, things you generally want to avoid because, you have to pay loans back. It may result in you losing some types of loans because if your VA benefits and your financial aid are greater than your cost of attendance budget, then unfortunately some things in terms of your financial aid, such as loans, ideally only loans, will be reduced. Now, it does depend on a person's specific financial aid offers. If they have a lot of, like, let's say, Texas Grant, Pell Grants, bunch of scholarships, and in that case, Hazelwood and stuff like that. In that scenario, since Texas Grant is the only thing that isn't directly entitled to you, because Pell Grant's an entitlement based off your FAFSA, scholarships are entitled to you based off of you earning them through the scholarship application process, and VA stuff is not something that financial aid can touch. The only thing that would be adjusted in that scenario would be the Texas Grant. So ideally, they'll do their best to try to minimize the adjustments, but technically that is something that could happen, but it depends on your personal financial aid offer. So keep an eye on how much the VA benefits are, how much your financial aid offers are, and your cost attendance budget would be very important. There are some things to kind of mitigate that though. They are very personal specific. So there is something called a cost of attendance change request form, because I did mention the budget's based off of, regional, historic, averages and stuff like that. So your personal situation may differ from that. So if your tuition fee costs are greater than what's estimatedly average based off of your enrollment, your budget could be increased by what your actual ones are. The same is true for housing and stuff like that. If you're living off campus and your rent, mortgage, utility bills are greater than what we have budgeted for, we can increase your budget as long as you provide that documentation for our office to do so. So there are other things like that. It could be childcare related. It could be if you're in a certain major and required to purchase like an instrument or photography equipment or art equipment. So those type of expenses can be included in your cost of budget, but you need to provide either three estimates, then they would average the estimates and put it on their account for you to provide the actual receipts within the 30-day period. Or if you already purchased that, then you would provide the proof of purchase for that period, and then they'd be able to increase your budget that way too. So there are means to try to increase your budget to hopefully avoid or mitigate an adjustment to your account. Or if you did have an adjustment, you can do that and hopefully get some of that stuff back. So definitely something to look into. But yeah, it doesn't impact the Hazelwood or anything like that, but it may impact your other stuff. It's important to know that federal benefits, such as VA Chapter 33, don't impact your cost percentage budget. It's only the Hazelwood because that's a Texas thing. Farm education's weird like that. But definitely important to keep an eye out for those sort of things. But very, very good question.
And thank you for that response, Dylan. It looks like the next one is a scholarship question. How do I apply to get the Blue and Gold Scholarship? Now, that is a very good question. Unfortunately, when it comes to institutional scholarships, those are basically processed and the eligibility is processed when you're being admitted into the university. So during your first point of admission, the admissions department will look at your transcript information and see, okay, do these students match these so-and-so requirements? If they do, you'll definitely be notified in your award notification whenever you are admitted. And unfortunately, if you don't really see that in your account whenever you initially come to campus, and that just means that you weren't eligible to receive it at that time. Now, I will say I have been getting a lot of questions as well pertaining to I'm coming in the spring term and I know I'm eligible for the presidential scholarship. Can I still get it? Unfortunately, we don't award spring only scholarships. So that would only be happening when you're first admitted in the fall term. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that information. It's definitely important to know that. It's also important to know that if you don't get those type of scholarships at that instance, you may not likely get it in future semesters. So if you come as a
Correct.
spring student, you're like, oh, well, I'm a fall spring student now. Unfortunately, as Nathan said, as Trey said, we get that information based off the time of admission. So at admissions, you were spring. Unfortunately, based off that admissions criteria, unfortunately, it wouldn't be able to for that. So that's why I would absolutely encourage you to apply for our donor-funded scholarships because some of them are renewable. It is scholarship dependent, but if you get one of those renewable scholarships, then that would definitely be able to assist you for like, the semesters moving forward and onward, as long as you meet that criteria. Other ones aren't renewable, so you'd have to like, hopefully get them again. But that's why it's so, so important to apply for those scholarships early, so that way you can get your foot in that door for those type of scholarships.
Correct. Thank you so much, Dylan.
Sorry, I like to talk way too
Oh, no
much.
need. No need to apologize. So it looks like the next question is kindly confirm international students are also eligible for scholarships. And that answer is 100% yes. So all admitted students have access to the donor-funded scholarship portal. I would say at this point, the only program that doesn't allow it is if you're in the competency-based program. But I'm not really going to explain what that program is. If you're in it, then you know you're not really eligible for donor-funded scholarships. But aside from that, you're all good to go.
Yeah, and if you don't know what that is, if you don't know what CBE or TAB programs are, then that definitely means you're not involved with it. So don't
Mhm.
worry about that. It's a very specific program, and only those involved with it, as Trey said, already know.
Correct. Mhm.
But yeah, very good question.
That it is. And the next one is, if I'm a graduate student, can I get a federal Pell Grant?
Unfortunately, not if you're a graduate student. So the Pell Grant's only available for students who are in their first bachelorette program. So if you are a first-time undergraduate student and you have that Pell eligible SAI, then you're definitely eligible for Pell. But the instant you graduate, become a second bachelor student, become a graduate student, fortunately at that point, Pell is no longer an option. It's important to know that as a graduate student, you also lose access to the subsidized loan. It's predominantly unsubsidized loan only. Depending on your budget, you may have room for a Graduate Plus loan. There are occasional grants, but those are few and far between. So especially if you're graduate students, applying for those scholarships are very important, as well as doing the FAFSA early. Because the earlier you are, the earlier chance you have in regards to getting, those few graduate level grant opportunities. So definitely do things early so that we can maximize your better forms of financial aid instead of, those loan types of financial aid. Because ideally, you want to prioritize those, minimize loan debt. Very important that you do that.
Yes, yes. The early bird gets the worm.
hmm
Okay, looks like the next question is, if I'm eligible for financial aid, how do I apply it to my account?
That's a very interesting question. So It kind of depends on like your personal situation, so it may involve an actual conversation between you and a financial aid advisor. But in general, if you're eligible for financial aid, you would need to do either a FAFSA or a TASFA. So if you've done a FAFSA or submitted a FAFSA to our office, that would be the key way to get financial aid. FAFSAs are available for U.S. citizens and certain non-U.S. citizens. Uh, they are very specific in the non-U.S. citizen criteria, so I do encourage looking on the federalstudentaid.gov website because they have a whole list of what those criterias are. Because, without looking at a student's account, we don't know what your situation would be. So if you are in the eligible non-citizen criteria, definitely check that to see if you qualify, because if you do, definitely complete the FAFSA. If you're not eligible for the FAFSA, then the alternative would be the TASFA. So the TASFA is instead of the FAFSA being federal, TASFA is state. So the FAFSA is a free application for federal student aid. The TASFA is a Texas application for state financial aid. So that's a little bit different. Those are for Texas residents who aren't eligible to do the FAFSA. So if you're a Texas resident, graduated from a Texas high school, that would generally mean that you're eligible for the TASFA if you're not eligible for the FAFSA first. There are either or scenarios. So you're either eligible for one, and if you're not eligible for the FAFSA, then the TAFSA would be your opportunity next. So those would be the general ways. If you're doing the FAFSA, you would need to put our school's information. So that, depending on the timing of when you did it, would be Texas A&M University Commerce or East Texas A&M University. Uh, they may or may not update their systems yet, so I'm going to put something in the chat for you if you haven't done a FAFSA just yet. This is essentially how you would be able to insert our school's information. They'll ask for a school code. It's not like a hidden secret knowledge or anything, but it's still good to have. So it's 003565. That's our school code. So if you haven't done a FAFSA, you would need to do a FAFSA with this school code or just inputting our information. It's important to note that if you're attending for the spring semester, you would need to do it for the 2024-2025 FAFSA. So if you go to the FAFSA website right now, you'll see two applications, 2024, 2025, and 2025, 2026. 2024, 2025 is the one you want to do because that pertains to the fall 24 till the summer 25 period. So since we're in spring now, that's one you need to do. For next fall, however, it would be the 25-26 FAFSA. So definitely keep that in mind because if you've done the 25-26, it's good that you've done it for the next fall semester moving forward, but unfortunately we can't use it for the current cycle. So the current aid year, can't use it. So you have to do the 2024-2025 one for the spring and summer semesters if you're doing a FAFSA. So after you do that, and we have our school's information, it generally takes 3 to 5 business days for us to receive that FAFSA. So if it was just done like yesterday or so, we're probably not going to have it. We might have it on Friday because, that may be like, that earliest business day, but we may not. It depends on how fast they process it and send us the data. So at that point, definitely keep an eye on your account if it was done recently, because as soon as we get it, we start the packaging process. Because the FAFSA is really just a giant calculator. And essentially, we use that information to calculate what you would be eligible for. Student.gov gives you like an estimate based off the data, but they give us information, we do the calculations, and then we offer that information to your account. Once it's in your account, yeah, a lot of steps to do. Once it's in your account, you need to go into your MyLeo account. You need to go to your student resources and go to the My Financial Aid section. Once there, you may need to answer some questions. This may be like where you're living on campus. This may be if you are convicted of a felony. That's a state question. Unfortunately, it was removed from the FAFSA, so we have to ask it ourselves now. But you have to answer those types of questions. After you do that, you should be able to go into the Offer tab and review, accept, or decline any financial aid that you've been offered, as long as you've done the FAFSA or completed the TASFA. Excuse me. So at that point, not done just yet. You'd review things, hit the
Almost there.
submit button, almost there. And at that point, you would hit select and do the terms and conditions. That gives you an overview of different requirements. Because if you take loans, you may have to do an entrance counseling and a master promissory note in order to receive them. If you don't do those requirements, you can't receive those federal student loans. But you definitely do need to do the terms and conditions to receive any federal Pell if you're financial aid Pell eligible. So after you accept stuff, go back into the home page because if you haven't done those requirements that I talked about, those flags will be there telling you, oh, hey, we don't have these, you need to do these. So at that point, after you've done them, if they're loan entrance counseling and master promissory notes or any sort of other requirements such as verification requirements, we'd be able to disperse your financial aid. Generally, there would be something that happens before disbursements called an NSLDS monitoring hold. That's normal. It's based off how soon, you're enrolled in your classes, how soon we get the FAFSA information. But, I mentioned it before for the consortium agreements, students are only allowed financial aid at one school at a time. So this NSLDS monitoring hold is placed on a student's accounts to make sure that you're not getting any other financial aid anywhere else. We look into something called NSLDS. It's the National Student Loan Data System. So it's essentially a resource that the Department of Education has, which shows if you're getting financial aid at places, and it shows your historic backgrounds. So our systems link up with that to make sure that we're okay to disperse things, and then once it's cleared, we're able to disperse. So it sounds like a lot, but that's why I definitely encourage doing the FAFSA early, so that way a lot of those things could be done in advance before the semester actually starts. But yeah, that would allow your federal financial aid to disperse to your account. For the state side, you would need to complete a TASFA, submit all applicable documents, and they would need to do the process of essentially running that calculation, running that packaging process. And you would do something similar where you would go into your financial aid portal and accept what you want, do the terms and conditions. Generally, verification occurs during that initial application process, but there still may be some other things. So if you're born male, in order to be eligible for state financial aid, you have to enroll in the selective service. So we may need that documentation of proof that you've done that. But ideally, that's all that you would need to do to be eligible for your financial aid to apply to your account, assuming all those other requirements are done. It may seem like a lot, but ideally, a lot of these happen a little bit earlier. The sooner you do the FAFSA, the sooner we can run the packaging, the sooner you can do those requirements. So hopefully there aren't like, bottlenecked into like the first, week or so. But yeah, definitely do your FAFSAs, do your TASFAs early, so that way a lot of these things can be done in advance. But yeah, it sounds a lot, but that would generally how your financial aid would go to your account balance. And if your financial aid fully covers everything, you would need to have done something called a refund selection in your MyLeo apps in order for student accounts, this is a separate office at this point, student accounts to process it towards your bank account. So it first go to your MyLeo bill and then your bank account in the event of your financial aid being greater than your account balance. Hopefully that wasn't too much information.
Not at all, not at all. Just take it one step at a time, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, the question was a little on the general side. So just to cover all bases, I think I went a little overboard. But, depending on your situation, some of those may be applicable, some of them may not. So if you don't have any of those loan requirements, you don't need to worry about that. And just mainly your terms, conditions, or any state requirements such as that selective service, if that's applicable to you.
Correct, correct. Okay. And it looks like we do have two more questions. Any financial aid, oh, let me just ask, is financial aid available for international students?
That's a good question because most people consider financial aid to be grants and stuff. So generally for international students, scholarships would be your main source of financial aid. So it's very important that you do those scholarship applications so that way you can be eligible for that. Because a lot of times international students, they're not Texas residents, so they are often charged out-of-state tuition. So if they have a competitive scholarship of $1,000 or more, that could make them eligible for a scholarship waiver. I was forgetting the word, scholarship waiver, which changes their out-of-state tuition to in-state. So the difference between those two, tuition costs is essentially doubled if you're out-of-state student versus in-state. So if you get $1,000 scholarship, in actuality, it's closer to like a $6,000 or $7,000 scholarship because it covers that difference between the out-of-state or in-state. So it's quite the impact. So I definitely recommend applying for those institutional scholarships because they have to be institutional competitive scholarships for that waiver. So if you do get a scholarship from outside the university, we will gladly apply that to your account. But if it's outside the university, it won't apply for that waiver. So just something just to keep in mind in regards to that. Has to be institutionally competitive.
Thank you so much, Dylan. And it looks like the last question is there any other transfer scholarship other than the blue and gold for spring students? Now, I did go over this a little bit earlier, but We don't offer any spring scholarships for people who are coming in for the spring term. So, unfortunately, with that being said, especially with institutional scholarships like the Blue and Gold or the Presidential Scholarship, those are going to be for the fall term when that's your first admit. So, say if you were admitted for the fall and then you actually don't decide to come and you want to come for the spring, unfortunately, you're no longer eligible to receive those institutional scholarships. You would have had to come in the fall term and be eligible during that time. But
Hmm.
like I said, the donor funded scholarship portal is open for the 25-26 academic year. So that is going to be your best bet to get as much money as you can for the upcoming academic year.
Yeah, very good question.
Mhm.
I'm not seeing any of the questions at the moment. So just before we go, there should be a chat function available to y'all. Would you be able to type in how you heard about us keeping it real today? We definitely like to know, so that way we can, kind of focus on those areas of like spreading the word, how we can, get the attention of even more people, just so that way we can keep it real together in regards to, all things financial and scholarships. So definitely let us know that way, so that way we can, increase our efforts in spreading the word. If you're unable to do it through the chat, then try doing it through the Q&A instead. Just so that way we can go ahead and see that information. So that way, oh, perfect. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, looks like chat function's disabled for this session for some reason. But either way, oh, were you able to uh, see the QR code that I sent if it was disabled?
I was able to see it. I think it's really more so the participants who can't type in it.
Okay, okay. Something we need to work on. Okay, okay. Yeah. So email blasts. Very, very good. So yeah, if you heard it through any other ways, use the question and answer session so we can see it, and so that way we know so that way we can, spread the word and increase that better. QR code on the share screen. Okay, good. That's very good. But yeah, so definitely let us know how you heard about us, so that way we can go ahead and expand on efforts to reach a larger group. Because we are glad to have you all join us, but we can get even more people, even more questions. That'd also be good too, because there
Mm,
may be situations that you're experiencing that other students may not even think about. But if you think of those questions, or if they think of those questions, that may be something that can help you out too. So definitely let us know how you heard about us, so that we can reach out more people, and that way we'd be able to help you all out even better. Yeah, we'll keep that open for a little bit. And then as you answer those questions, we don't want to keep too much of your time since, yeah, there's definitely not any more questions. That just people giving us how they heard about us. So if you've already done that, I just want to thank you all for coming here today. Thank you for asking those questions. Thank you for keeping it real with us. My name is Dylan. I'm joined by.
Nathan/Trey.
Mhm. But yeah, so thank you all for coming. And before you go, once again, just type in what you heard about us, how you heard about us, through email blast, through social media, through something else. And then I hope you all have a good one. But yeah, we'll keep it open just a little bit so that way y'all can just trickle down those answers. But I hope you have a good week, good day, and we'll see you next month.
And go Lions!
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have a good one, everyone. But yeah, definitely keep sending those comments. Let's
Oh,
see
it's
here.
looking like a lot of emails. I know we've been sending like text messages too, but oh,
Hmm. Yeah, email blast.
surprised.
Makes sense. Yeah, we do love our email blasts. So if you're still here, I just want to say always check your student emails. That's how we send communications. So always a good idea to keep that on hand. But yeah, I think that's about it. So I want to thank you all again for coming. Thank you very much. I hope you have a good one. Take care, everyone.